This new software makes your position redundant, my boss explained while terminating me after 12 years as fleet logistics manager. My name is Marcus Reed, 38 years old, father of 2. I nodded like it made perfect sense while Jackson Butler, the operations director at Rivermore Freight, explained how their new logistics program would save the company nearly $200,000 annually. My salary and benefits made up most of that figure. We've uploaded all the routes and client specifications, Jackson said, not quite meeting my eyes. The AI optimization is supposed to be 20% more efficient than human management. I listened without interrupting. 12 years meant nothing against a quarterly earnings report. Not the late nights tracking shipments during blizzards. Not the countless hours spent building relationships with clients across the country. Not the emergency reroutes I designed when Hurricane Laura shut down half our southern corridors. The software could supposedly do it all better. We'll need you to train Daniel on any remaining processes during your notice period, Jackson added. Daniel was 23, fresh out of college. His job would be pressing buttons when the software told him to. No problem, I said, still calm. The termination letter sat between us like something dead. 2 weeks severance for every year served, fair enough on paper. I cleaned out my office that afternoon, pictures of my kids, a logbook I kept of every major client's specific needs and quirks, a folder of routes I'd personally optimized for perishable goods, routes that shaved hours off delivery times by accounting for traffic patterns the GPS data missed. The folder went into my bag. Nobody asked about it. Coworkers stopped by. Awkward handshakes. Empty promises to stay in touch. Only Elaine from dispatch seemed genuinely upset. Who am I supposed to call when everything goes sideways now? You've got the program, I reminded her. 20% more efficient, remember? She rolled her eyes. That thing doesn't know what to do when the Murphy dairy shipment arrives at the same time as the Coldstream meats truck. You know Murphy needs special handling. Their containers leak if they sit too long. I patted her shoulder. I'm sure it'll figure it out. On my way out, I passed the boardroom. Through the glass, I could see Jackson showing the executive team colorful charts. Cost savings, efficiency improvements, return on investment. I wondered if they'd factored in the cost of losing 2 decades of relationships I'd built with clients from Memphis to Billings. I didn't slam doors, didn't make a scene, just walked to my truck, set my box of belongings in the passenger seat, and drove home. But something in my gut told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I started at Rivermore Freight back when we had just 8 trucks and a dream. Old man Rivermore hired me himself. This company runs on relationships and reliability, he'd told me. Technology changes, people don't. Remember that. Those words stuck with me while I built our logistics system from scratch. Every client had different needs. Coldstream needed their meat shipments delivered by 4 a.m. so their butchers could prep for the morning rush. Murphy Dairy's tanks had to be emptied within 30 minutes of arrival, or the pressure valves would leak product. Greenfield Produce needed their shipments routed away from highways where diesel fumes could seep into their organic vegetables. I knew these details because I'd spent years learning them, years earning trust. When old man Rivermore retired 5 years ago, his son Trevor took over. Younger, MBA from Northwestern, always talking about disruption and leverage. That's when things began to change. First came the consultants, then the cost-cutting, then the glowing reports about automation. I watched it happen, but kept my head down and did my job. The drivers trusted me. The clients respected me. I figured that counted for something. My wife Catherine noticed the shift before I admitted it to myself. They're phasing you out, she said one night after I mentioned the new software they were installing. You should start looking elsewhere. I brushed it off. Nobody knows the system like I do. The software needs human oversight. But the writing was on the wall. The quarterly meetings where I used to present our logistics metrics were now handled by the tech team. My emails to Trevor went unanswered. Jackson started making decisions about fleet management without consulting me. 2 weeks before they let me go, I got a call from Thomas Hayward, operations manager at Oxwell Industries, Rivermore's main competitor. Just checking in, he said casually. Heard Rivermore's making some changes. If you ever want to grab coffee, let me know. I told him I was fine, loyal to the end. The morning they fired me, Catherine didn't seem surprised when I called her from the parking lot. "What will you do now?" she asked simply. "Take some time off, figure things out." But that night, after the kids were asleep, I pulled out the folder of routes I'd taken from my office. Routes the software would never understand because they weren't just about distances and fuel efficiency. They were about knowing that Officer Benson always set up speed traps on Highway 16 on Thursdays. About knowing the loading dock manager at Coldstream wouldn't accept deliveries during his lunch break, no matter what the schedule said. I called Thomas Hayward. 2 weeks after my termination, I was sitting in a booth at Lenny's Diner with a cup of coffee and my laptop open. I'd been tracking Rivermore's deliveries through contacts I still had at client facilities. The picture wasn't pretty. Murphy Dairy had logged 3 late deliveries in 10 days. Coldstream reported a shipment that sat unrefrigerated for 45 minutes because of dock scheduling conflicts. Greenfield Produce found their organic lettuce spoiled after a truck took the interstate bypass I always avoided because of the heavy industrial emissions. I wasn't happy about it. These were people I'd worked with for years, but I wasn't surprised either. My phone buzzed. A text from Elaine. "Complete disaster today. System routed 3 trucks to same loading bay. Murphy's shipment delayed 2 HRs. They're furious." Another buzz. This time from Joe, one of Rivermore's veteran drivers. "New system had me go through downtown Denver at rush hour. Lost 90 mins. Nobody to call for override." I didn't respond to either message. Not my circus anymore. But I made notes in my spreadsheet, tracking the pattern of failures. The bell above the diner door rang. Thomas Hayward walked in, spotted me, and slid into the booth across from me. "Thanks for calling," he said, ordering coffee when the waitress came by. "Been hoping to hear from you." I closed my laptop. "I'm not looking to burn bridges." Thomas shook his head. "Not asking you to, but Oxwell needs someone who understands logistics from the ground up, not just from algorithms and data points." "You don't use automation?" "We use it," Thomas said, "but as a tool, not a replacement. Tech doesn't build relationships, doesn't understand why the Murphy family insists their products be delivered first thing Monday, even though Wednesday would be more efficient. Doesn't know that Coldstream's dock manager needs military precision, or he falls apart." I studied him, trying to read his angle. "So what are you offering?" "Consulting to start. Help us understand these client relationships better. Eventually, maybe something permanent." I thought about 12 years of institutional knowledge walking out Rivermore's door in a cardboard box. About a software program that couldn't possibly understand the nuances I'd learned through thousands of hours of problem solving and relationship building. "I won't share proprietary information," I said finally. Thomas nodded. "Don't need you to. Just help us understand what these clients actually need, not what some algorithm thinks they need." I sat back, fingers drumming on my closed laptop. Through the diner window, I could see Rivermore's headquarters in the distance, glass and steel reflecting the afternoon sun. "When can I start?" I asked. Thomas smiled. "How about right now?" I didn't feel vengeful, didn't feel like I was betraying Rivermore. They'd made their choice. I was making mine. But as I opened my laptop again and began explaining the real needs of clients like Murphy and Coldstream, something shifted inside me. A quiet determination replaced the hurt and confusion of the past weeks. I wasn't done. I was just getting started. 1 month into my consulting work with Oxwell, I got a call from Jackson Butler. "We need to talk," he said, voice tight. "Some of our clients have been asking for you specifically." I was in my home office reviewing Oxwell's delivery protocols for temperature-sensitive items. Through the window, I could see my kids playing in the backyard, enjoying their summer break. "I don't work for Rivermore anymore, Jackson." "Look," he said, lowering his voice, "the transition hasn't been as smooth as we anticipated. We're willing to bring you back as a consultant to help fix some issues." I leaned back in my chair. "Issues with the software?" "Minor adjustments," he insisted. "Nothing serious. Trevor authorized a very competitive consulting rate. I thought about the data I'd been tracking. Rivermore had lost 8% of their on-time deliveries in the past month. Client complaints had spiked 40%. 2 smaller accounts had already jumped ship. "Send me the offer in writing," I said. "I'll think about it." Catherine found me still sitting at my desk an hour later. "Rivermore called?" I nodded. "They're struggling." She sat on the edge of the desk. "And?" "And nothing. I've got a good thing going with Oxwell." "But you're tempted," she observed. I was. Despite everything, I'd built that system. Those client relationships meant something to me. Maybe I could help both companies. Catherine raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The next morning, I drove to Rivermore for a meeting. The receptionist, didn't know me, directed me to a conference room where Jackson, Trevor Rivermore, and Daniel were waiting. "Marcus," Trevor said, rising to shake my hand. All smiles now that they needed something. "Appreciate you coming in." "Let's get to it," I said, taking a seat. "What exactly do you need?" Jackson opened a laptop. "The system is functioning as designed, but there are certain client-specific requirements it's not accounting for." "You mean like Murphy's leaking containers? Or Coldstream's loading dock schedule?" Daniel looked up sharply. "How did you know we're having issues with those clients?" I didn't mention my ongoing contact with their staff. "Because I spent 12 years learning their quirks. That's why I'm here, right?" Trevor cleared his throat. "We'd like you to document these special considerations so we can program them into the system." The request hung in the air. They wanted me to download 12 years of experience into their software so they could finish replacing me. "And you're offering?" $5,000 for 2 weeks of consultation, Trevor said. "Very generous considering." I looked at the 3 of them. Trevor, who'd decided algorithms were better than people. Jackson, who couldn't meet my eyes when he fired me. Daniel, who knew just enough to be dangerous. "No," I said simply. Trevor blinked. "Excuse me?" "My knowledge and relationships aren't something I can just transfer to a program. That's not how this works." Jackson leaned forward. "Marcus, be reasonable. This is a generous offer." "It's not about the money," I said, standing up. "What you're asking can't be done by a consultant in 2 weeks. It takes years of direct client interaction." Trevor's face hardened. "We've heard you're working with Oxwell now." And there it was. The real reason for this meeting. "As a consultant, yes, is that a problem?" "We consider that a conflict of interest," Trevor said coldly, "especially if you're sharing proprietary information about our clients." I felt a flash of anger but kept my voice steady. "I've shared nothing proprietary. But it's interesting that you're worried about that while simultaneously asking me to give you everything I know." "We'll be watching very closely," Trevor warned as I headed for the door, "and reaching out to our clients to ensure no inappropriate solicitation occurs." I paused in the doorway. "Maybe you should focus more on keeping those clients happy and less on what I'm doing. Just a suggestion." As I walked through the parking lot, my phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "How'd it go?" I typed back, "They're scared." The call came 3 weeks later. I was in Oxwell's main facility, revamping their cold chain protocols, when my phone lit up with Elaine's number. "You won't believe what happened," she said, voice low like she was hiding in a bathroom stall or empty stairwell. "Coldstream just pulled their business. Entire account. Gone." I set down my clipboard. "What happened?" 3 shipments arrived with temperature damage in 2 weeks. Their CEO personally called Trevor. It was ugly. She paused. "Murphy's making noise too. And Greenfield." "The software still isn't working?" Elaine laughed bitterly. "Oh, it's working exactly as designed. Perfectly optimized for cost efficiency. Just turns out that's not what our clients actually need." After we hung up, I stared at the Oxwell loading dock, watching the coordinated dance of forklifts and trucks. Thomas walked up beside me. "Everything okay?" I hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Rivermore just lost the Coldstream account." Thomas raised an eyebrow. Big loss. Any idea who they're moving to? Not yet. I didn't mention that I had already submitted a proposal to Coldstream on Oxwell's behalf last week, anticipating this very scenario. Not technically solicitation, since they had reached out first. That night, I received an email from William Coldstream himself. Dinner tomorrow? Need to discuss shipping options urgently. Over steaks the next evening, William didn't mince words. Your old company is a mess, Marcus. 3 shipments of prime beef spoiled. Do you know how much that cost us? I nodded sympathetically. Automated systems struggle with specialized requirements. Damn right they do. William cut into his steak aggressively. Trevor kept insisting the software would adjust, learn from its mistakes, but it kept making the same errors. What did he say when you terminated the contract? William's laugh was harsh. Tried to blame the drivers, then offered a discount. Never once admitted their fancy system was the problem. He pointed his fork at me. You knew this would happen, didn't you? I took a sip of water. I knew there were aspects of the logistics that couldn't be easily programmed, yes. Well, William said, leaning back, I've reviewed Oxwell's proposal. The one with your name on it, competitive rates, dedicated routing specialist. That's you, I assume? I nodded. When can you start handling our deliveries? Immediately. I've already prepared your specific protocols. William smiled for the first time that evening. That's what I want to hear. On my drive home, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Lisa Murphy from Murphy Dairy. Marcus, she said without preamble, we're having serious problems with Rivermore. Heard you're with Oxwell now. The following week, Greenfield Produce called, then 2 smaller clients. I didn't reach out to any of them first. I didn't have to. They all knew where to find me. When I told Thomas about the growing list of former Rivermore clients wanting to move to Oxwell, he just smiled. Guess we'll need to fast-track that permanent position we discussed. That Friday, I drove past Rivermore's headquarters on my way home. Through the glass facades, I could see people working late, crisis mode. I felt a twinge of sympathy for the employees who had nothing to do with the decision to replace me. But then I remembered Jackson's words. This new software makes your position redundant. They had bet everything on technology, forgetting that logistics isn't just about algorithms and efficiency. It's about people, relationships, things a program could never understand. I didn't set out for revenge, but I wasn't going to turn it down when it fell into my lap. By the 3rd month after my termination, Oxwell had signed contracts with 6 former Rivermore clients, including their 3 biggest accounts, Coldstream, Murphy, and Greenfield. My new office had a window overlooking the loading docks, where I could watch the precision choreography I had helped design. Thomas knocked on my open door one morning. Just got off the phone with Harrington Foods. They're jumping ship from Rivermore too. I looked up from my computer. That's their 4th biggest account. Was. Thomas corrected with a smile. You free for lunch? The executive team wants to discuss your permanent role here. As we walked to the conference room, Thomas lowered his voice. Heard through the grapevine that Rivermore's in serious trouble. They've laid off 15% of their staff already. The news didn't please me as much as it might have. Those were good people losing their jobs because of bad decisions at the top. Any word on the software? Thomas smirked. Apparently they've hired 3 consultants trying to fix it. Too little, too late. After a productive lunch where I accepted the position of Senior Logistics Director at Oxwell, I returned to my office to find Elaine waiting for me. Hope you don't mind, she said, standing awkwardly by my desk. Security let me up when I mentioned your name. Everything okay? Elaine twisted her hands. They laid off 8 people from dispatch yesterday. I'm still there, but... She took a deep breath. Are you hiring? I studied her face, tired, worried, but still determined. As a matter of fact, we are. Let me introduce you to HR. Over the next 2 weeks, I brought on 3 former Rivermore employees who had been casualties of the company's downward spiral. Good people who deserved better. One evening as I was leaving the office, I found Trevor Rivermore waiting by my truck. Came to see the operation for myself, he said, hands in his pockets. He looked thinner, the circles under his eyes pronounced. Impressive setup. I waited, saying nothing. You've taken half our clients, he said finally. We're filing for Chapter 11 next week. I leaned against my truck. I didn't take anything, Trevor. Your clients left because you couldn't serve them properly. Because you wouldn't help us fix the system. No, I corrected him. Because you thought a system could replace human knowledge and relationships. Your father understood that technology is a tool, not a replacement for people who understand the business. Trevor looked away. We've got 63 families losing jobs because of this. The statement was designed to make me feel guilty. It almost worked. That's on you, I said quietly. Not me. We're willing to sell, Trevor said suddenly. Oxwell could acquire our remaining assets, routes, equipment. It would be cheaper than watching us slowly collapse while you pick off the rest of our clients one by one. I considered him for a long moment. I'll talk to Thomas. As Trevor walked away, my phone buzzed. A text from William Coldstream. Perfect delivery today. Like the old days, but better. Glad to have you back handling our account. I stared at the message, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Satisfaction, yes. But not joy at Rivermore's collapse. Just the quiet certainty that actions have consequences. The next morning, I presented Trevor's offer to Thomas and the Oxwell executive team. There's value there, I explained. Equipment, some good people who deserve a shot, and a few remaining client relationships worth preserving. Thomas studied me. You're advocating for the company that fired you? I'm advocating for a smart business decision, I said, and for the employees who had nothing to do with that choice. Thomas nodded slowly. Draft a proposal. We'll consider it. I spent that weekend creating a detailed acquisition plan, not out of revenge or triumph, but because it was the right move for everyone involved. Sometimes winning doesn't look like what you expect. 6 months after my termination from Rivermore, I stood in the lobby of what used to be their headquarters. The Rivermore logo had been removed from the wall, replaced with Oxwell's blue and silver emblem. The acquisition had gone through 3 weeks earlier. Jackson Butler approached, hand extended. Marcus, thanks for meeting me here. I shook his hand briefly. Thomas said you wanted to talk. Jackson glanced around the busy lobby. Is there somewhere private? I led him to a small conference room and closed the door. Jackson took a seat, looking uncomfortable in the unfamiliar surroundings. I've been offered a position in the transition team, he said. Reporting to you, apparently. I nodded. That's right. Jackson looked down at his hands. After everything that happened, I'm surprised. This isn't about personal feelings, I said evenly. You know the operation. That knowledge is valuable during the merger. Even though I was the one who fired you? I leaned forward. You were following orders, Jackson. We both know that decision came from above. He seemed to deflate slightly. The software was a disaster. We tried everything to make it work. Except the one thing that would have worked, I pointed out. Understanding that logistics isn't just about algorithms, it's about people. From the hallway came the sounds of the facility in transition, workers moving equipment, new signs being installed, employees from both companies learning to work together. Jackson looked up, his expression a mixture of resignation and relief. So where do I fit in the new structure? I slid a folder across the table. Operations Coordinator. Working with the team I'm building to integrate human expertise with supportive, not replacement, technology. He opened the folder, reviewing the offer letter inside. This is more than I expected. It's what the position is worth, I said, standing. Technology changes. People don't. Your experience has value, Jackson. As we walked out, Trevor Rivermore was coming through the front doors for a final meeting with Oxwell's legal team. Our eyes met briefly across the lobby. No words needed to be exchanged. The outcome spoke for itself. 1 year after being told my position was redundant, I stood in Oxwell's expanded control center, watching the logistics system I had designed in action. Screens displayed route optimizations, but also highlighted driver notes and client preferences. The human elements the Rivermore software had disregarded. Elaine approached with a tablet. Murphy Dairy just sent over their forecasted shipments for the quarter, 15% increase. Make sure James knows about their valve pressure issue, I reminded her. He'll be handling their account while I'm on vacation next week. Catherine and I were taking the kids to Yellowstone, my first real vacation in years. The irony wasn't lost on me. Getting fired had eventually led to a better position, better compensation, and better work-life balance. Thomas joined us in the control room, watching the organized chaos with satisfaction. Just got off the phone with the board. Quarterly numbers are excellent. They specifically mentioned the client retention rates. I nodded. We'd not only kept all the former Rivermore clients we'd acquired, but added a dozen new ones based on our reputation for reliability. The human-centered logistics approach is paying off, Thomas said, clapping me on the shoulder. Your instincts were right. Later that afternoon, I walked through the loading dock area where a new shipment was being prepared for Coldstream Meats. The driver, one of our veterans, was reviewing the special handling instructions I had helped document. All set for the morning run, Sam? I asked. He nodded. Got the route all planned. Avoiding that construction on Highway 16 even though the GPS keeps trying to send me that way. Trust your judgment, I told him. The software is there to help, not decide. As I headed to my truck at the end of the day, I paused to look back at the facility. The software that was supposed to make me redundant had ultimately proven that some things can't be automated. Relationships, experience, judgment. In trying to replace me, they had only proven how irreplaceable the human element really was. I hadn't set out for revenge, but I had found something better: vindication.